Call the meeting to order.
Welcome back. Thank you.
Welcome to the MUD 7 Board of Directors meeting for October. And the first order of business is to receive any comments from the public. Mr. Yours?
Yeah. My name is John Yours. I'm here tonight to make sure you understand that I'm running for place 7 on the Lone Star Groundwater Conservation District Board. Anybody who lives in the Woodlands can vote for place 7. My view is that we need the board to be more active in its publication and understanding of subsidence and water table and the relationship that they have to each other. And I want to bring that to the board and make sure it's very apparent to them that a lot of people in Montgomery County are concerned about subsidence and their plan to increase the pumping for another 30,000 acre feet and do nothing but lower the water table and create a lot of subsidence. And we just cannot afford that for the private property rights of the homeowner. So I want to be there and be a part of that management plan and represent you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item 3, consider an act on request for adjustments or relief. Anything?
Nothing from me.
All right, thank you. Consent agenda is items 4 through 8. So does anyone have questions, comments on the minutes, financial reports, investment reports, tax collector reports, attendance, expense reimbursement, per diem? These are all our regular. Good to see that we're earning some interest on our investments now. That's good. Been quite a while.
The only thing, I guess, the discussion for future topics includes Paul's report on the USGS meeting on the 22nd. I guess Paul's not here. I guess that's not going to happen, right? On page 4.
Yeah, we have that as item number 11, so we'll just put that forward next month.
Yeah.
All right. If there is no questions or comments on the consent agenda, anybody like the motion that we approve the consent agenda?
Sure.
We have a motion and I will second it. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Takes us to item 9. San Center River Authority report.
Well, good afternoon. There's a lot of information in your packet. I'm gonna hit a high level on a few topics, and of course, if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer. One thing to note is that you're going through the packet, there is a end of year project recap, if you will. And that's something that we've done occasionally, and what it does is basically y'all approve the funding for projects, but this document just kind of shows you before and after pictures, approved budget, end of project expenses, schedule. If it went over budget, why it went over budget. So it's just a year-end recap of some of the projects. The next thing is, package you'll see, there's minutes for the stakeholder meeting and minutes for a progress meeting. And then up here on the table is another set of progress meeting notes, because there was 2 progress meetings. Thing to note with the strategic plan is that November 2nd is when, I guess, the rubber hits the road. That's when we're going to start talking about the 8 alternatives and the cost of those 8 alternatives. Pass out all the information, let the stakeholders meet with the MUDs, talk about it, give us some general direction, so on and so forth. Because in January, we're going to meet with the stakeholders the day before the trustees meeting. And ask them to make a vote on which way they want to go. Take it to the MUDs the week after that. Once we concurrence from the MUDs, we're going to go to the trustees and ask for concurrence as well. That vote will set forward the path forward basically for the wastewater strategic plan. High level, but any questions?
Yeah, can you remove that timeline? So you're coming to the MUDs and then going to the trustees?
Correct.
So you'll come to the MUDs when?
January,
Then when we go to the trustees?
February.
February, okay. Because I thought this says, let's talk about the final issue at the end of January. You won't be able to final issue it.
Until the trustees actually until the MUDs and the trustees both approve it.
So that'll be February.
That'd be there.
Okay. Are we getting any more discussion today on the stakeholder update on the 28th, or just the notes that are in the package?
We can go through it. It was kind of a hodgepodge of different things, nothing really specific that I can recall. Except for some of the stakeholders asked for more information on what an MBR facility is, membrane bioreactor facility. I thought it was a good high level understanding or brief of what it was. When talked about some of the capacity and also the phasing of the facility, that's an item that'll definitely need to be worked out in phase 2 if we go forward. And basically it's saying, how big do you build the plant? Right now, both facilities put together average about 7 million gallons a day, but there's about 14 million gallons a day of capacity built. So do you reduce that and build 8 MGD? Do you build 10? What do you do for counting on growth in the future? So on and so forth.
It looked like there was 2 different opinions on the growth and the outlook. Right?
There's definitely varying opinions on the state.
In terms of expected demand for wastewater treatment services or volumes.
Well, across the board on duty, as you can imagine, you get that many people together to talk about topics, you're gonna have varying decisions, if you will. So capacity is one of them. I know Don's brought up some concerns about building too big. Plant 1 right now is 8 MGD and it's seen about 3 MGD. So in theory, you're 5 MGD too big.
That's a problem, right? Because you have,
Actually, on the wastewater side, it helps. It allows with detention time. Now, if you're way too big, then yeah, it definitely hurts quite a bit, but right now we can actually handle a lot of the flow that comes through even on the rainfall. So not too bad. Problem is if you don't need 8, you don't want to spend the money to build another 8.
right.
Now, 6 and final accounting, we've sold 6 million gallons of that 8. So per contract, I have 6 MGD that I've sold to the MUDs. And so I would say I need to build at least 6 MGD because that's what I've sold. So those conversations haven't been exhausted yet.
Yeah, if you look on page 53, in the middle, item 6, the second quote you got 2 concerns about oversizing and 2 talking about it's not big enough. Okay, so, which may mean you're in the sweet spot, right? I mean,
You could be.
okay,
The one thing that I stress a little bit about is we don't know what the future holds. If you're planning 50 years ahead, you don't want to build something too small, but if you don't overbuild it now, then have to rehab it in 10 years. Not use it.
Is it not an option to build it for the lower end of the scale with the, with the design? To design it with the ability to add some additional capacity without having to redo everything, 10, 20 years down the road?
That's entirely a possibility. And that was part of the phasing. You're saying phase 1 is 6 million gallons a day. Phase 2 is then when you bring plant 2 over, if Howard Hughes builds a lot, then you go to 10. And then if you need it in 25 years, then you go to 12. So
As long as that's in the design, to add that.
that depends on the treatment technology too. It's a space thing. So if you go conventional, if you add that, then you need more space for concrete. But if you go MBR, it's not just plug and play, but it's just inside of a building in cassette space.
well, the building's big enough for it.
I'm sorry about
If
that.
the building's big enough for it.
Correct. Or if you leave enough space on the outside, build a building next to it. A lot to be considered, but a lot of that's too in the weeds. For this purpose here, everything across the board is status quo. So if we've planned for a 14 MGD facility and it's $200 million, and then we look at it and y'all look at it and say, okay, we don't need a 14 MGD facility, we need 10, cost should go down. So it's kind of status quo at this point.
I imagine why you would overbuild day one, substantially when you could phase it in.
I mean, all the options will be evaluated on the same basis. So it's just a sliding scale on.
Exactly. That's why there's a lot of discussion about capacity, but that's the same logic is If I knock everything down 25% capacity, then cost all goes down the same, not 25%, but also slides down. So this is high level at this point. Phase 2, if we get there, will be more in depth.
John, you were at the meeting. What you think?
It's a pretty good summary. I know I cautioned about the meeting about, we talked about the phasing thing. Cause you don't want to give up, permitted capacity. You may never get it back.
Right, yeah.
So whenever they go to structure the plant permit, they probably ought to include some kind of phased approach. And that was one of my comments there.
If you're permitted for it, and if you don't build, you're okay. If you,
Well, as long as then the permit has a phased approach
Yeah.
and you can show on paper that what you're doing, then they'll do that. But if you give up that capacity, you may never get it back. Somebody downstream is gonna take it or something will happen. So you don't want to do that.
And all three of the facilities had phasing at one point in time. Phase
Yeah.
plants 2 and 3 still have to take. Something we're going to talk about on November 2nd as well, while we're talking phasing, is when we're looking at the financials, how does it make sense to look at the financials? The immediate need or the over 50-year need? Because directors in 25 years could change the path of how we go. So if we pick an option that's, makes financial sense for 50 years, but doesn't make financial sense for the first 25, how does that work? If somebody changes it, so we're trying to split up the financial stuff, so you can say, okay, the immediate need is wastewater plant 1. A new plant is X dollars and to rebuild it is X dollars.
you're gonna have major rehab replacements, whatever, before 50 years. So why don't you, I mean, I don't know if it's 20 or 25 or something like that. It seems like that would be the time, the initial time horizon I'd want to look at.
And that's what we're looking at right now with plant 1, because that's the immediate need. Plant 2 starts in 2047 and goes to 2067. And so, yeah, there's a lot of cost in there, but should that cost drive what we do today? Or should you build a plant today and allow for it to be expanded to? A lot of good discussion. The problem is there's 1,000 different ways to skin the cat, so options never end. Yeah.
Well, that will ultimately come down to a majority vote of the Board of Trustees and the water agency.
I believe so.
What designs
Or
approved?
is it?
Well, I mean, ultimately, it comes back to the trustees, but then any funding decision goes back to the MUDs because it's going to be included in a future railroad budget. So you would need to have the votes among the MUDs and have a majority of those give direction so the trustees can vote in favor of the budget. So back to the majority of the trustees via votes through the MUDs.
And the group that's meeting, it's a blend of MUD directors, trustees,
Yeah, page
and
55, got it.
Non-voting stakeholders, think of
The only
commerce.
voting members are MUD directors.
Right.
Yeah, township.
I guess where I'm going with this is I'm wondering if Bob Lux needs to, as this progresses down to one or two, A or B kind of decisions, maybe have another ad hoc committee that, drills down and can take all this information, distill it, because you can't present all this stuff to the trustees and all the MUDs.
Well, the trustees will be voting at the direction of the MUDs, right? So the MUDs need to be,
know.
yeah,
That's the way it should be,
Yeah, it should be, yeah. So we need, I mean, somewhere between when you have your final stakeholder and they come out with a recommendation, I think.
So
the
is it
MUD
up or down, the MUDs vote, yes, we want to take the stakeholder recommendation, or is there going to be stakeholder recommendation A and stakeholder recommendation B?
I don't know. I
It's
mean,
gonna majority, if majority of the stakeholders say this is what we want, that's where we're gonna take to the MUDs.
So if the MUDs don't vote for that,
I'm looking for two alternatives at the end of the day. I'm not looking for one, because all this being high level, if I go in with just one alternative, it's kind of like you're stuck. But if I go in, right now we have 8. If I get that down to 2 and go into a phase 2 and study 2 more directly, then you only have 2 options for the MUDs to discuss instead of 8.
Right. I guess what I'm asking is between when your stakeholder has their voting and when the MUD is asked to vote on it, we need more time to talk about it. We probably need a separate meeting just to review it. I mean, maybe one of these, Friday morning open sessions, okay?
Yeah.
Because to come in to us in this meeting and say, here's what the stakeholders recommended, please approve it within our constraint on once a month is going to be unacceptable.
I agree with
I
that.
agree. Now, one thing to note, in November 2nd, when we have the stakeholder meeting, we're gonna have all the same information. So we're gonna present in November, December, and then January is just wrapping a bow on it. But if y'all still think you need a Friday, morning education session, I'm fine with that. There's no problem. I'm looking for January, February, because our project plan starts in March, and I have to present that, roll that into the budget. But if y'all need time to look at it in January and actually vote in February, that'll work as well.
I'd rather go ahead and just keep voting January. You just need to get us information beforehand.
Yeah,
We invite all the trustees to one of these stakeholder meetings where you're gonna do a little bit of a deep dive. And that way you don't have to schedule a separate additional meeting.
Yeah, there's a lot of time between November 2nd, I think it's January 10th. So we could always set up a Friday in December and run through everything with everybody, just like we've done
Well,
with
the problem there is you got people that can't make a Friday morning thing.
Yeah.
I do a Friday and a Saturday, do Saturday. Dan's working it, not me.
I guess my point is the people have their board meeting and trustee meeting times carved out already. That's what I'm saying.
I'm fine with whatever gets y'all the information y'all need to make an informed decision. If y'all could just let Jim know what's best for y'all, because I'm sure the other ones would like to be informed as well.
But you won't have the stakeholder recommendation until meeting, right?
Correct. That's why I'm on one.
Yeah.
But we'll have the information to pass out. So if y'all wanted to talk about the meetings, we could go through it.
I think what I want is, I want to know what the stakeholders are recommending.
Now, the stakeholders should take what the MUD's thinking and take it back and vote on that. So I know in some cases it's,
Catch 22 then.
it is. But that's been the general thing. It's just the way the meetings had always worked before. It said we'd have the stakeholder meeting, then the MUDs. But in this case, we can have the stakeholder meeting, then, MUD meetings, then the final stakeholder meeting for the vote. But if a separate meeting is needed any day.
I think that we would all agree that we're going to lay out a path and the detail. We don't have it today that works. And we're, for the most part, are comfortable with the process and the decision making.
It's a big
Just
enough
give us
deal.
some-
It's worth it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
give us some time to get that ironed out, but we'll make sure that it's something that works for everybody as best we can.
Mhm. Okay, thank you. All right, anything else, Chris?
No, sir.
Any questions on the wastewater strategic plan, infrastructure funding, Bear Branch, dam, repairs, any of that?
We got just got an email update. Did you get that from Ed as
We
well?
haven't printed and mailed?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just on the Bear Branch Dam repairs, the repairs are complete. Final inspection has occurred. MUD's final pay request is being processed on the dam repairs that we approved a while back. The low flow vault update, design drawings and specifications are 75% complete. Minor edits needed. We'll seek several quotes for construction. What else?
Be nice to do that while the water level's down, wouldn't it?
Is the water level down?
Almost empty.
You can walk across that reservoir right now, I think.
Just about. It raises above, the low flow vault raises above full elevation, so
Mhm.
we can do it.
Okay, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
All right, item 10 is the Spring Creek detention study. Anything to add there?
Recent progress meeting instructed half the consultant to develop cost schedules and deliverables by October 28th, the SJRA. Funding partner meeting is set for November the 14th to discuss these, and then a stakeholder meeting on November 15th for a decision on cost schedules and deliverables.
Can you make sure those notes, those dates are in the minutes?
Right, item 11, we're gonna have to push to next month. Supposed to be Paul Nelson's report on water table levels, well data.
Did anybody call into that meeting? I was busy that night.
Item 12, attorney's report.
No general items. Do need to cover number 13 with y'all.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, 13, your investment policies we talk about each year. The Public Funds Investment Act does require an annual review of the policy. Our firm conducts a review on behalf of all of our district clients and makes any recommended changes, makes any recommendations regarding proposed changes to your policy. You'll see a red line with a handful of administrative updates to the policy as recommended revisions for this year, pages 63 to 65 in your packet. Most of it relates to requirements that we have to have in all contracts with between our district clients and vendors pursuant to Texas legislature laws that prohibit the doing a business with entities that boycott energy companies, boycott firearm companies, do business with terrorist organizations, Iran, Sudan, et cetera. So we're putting those provisions in our investment policy to make sure we are fully compliant. We need a motion to approve the resolution evidencing the annual review has been completed and adopting the amended policy.
So there's already been some controversy over this boycotting of energy companies, claiming companies do and the companies saying they don't.
Correct.
Who's the arbiter on this thing?
Comptroller. So we jokingly refer to it as the comptroller's naughty list. And if you're on the list, then you cannot do business with political subdivisions or the state. And we have to check that list. You know, they come out with an update of it on an annual basis. And I mean, it can be updated more often, but they try to have a uniform update.
So since that's required, shouldn't that be an addendum to the IPS?
IPS.
Investment policy?
No, because it changes. So it's just any entity that boycotts, and that's determined by the comptroller.
So shouldn't there be a reference to it then? But by the way,
The
this,
statutory reference is sufficient because that's what tasked, part of that is what tasked the comptroller with making that determination under those statutory references. That's who the legislature is tasked with determining who is or is not in compliance. Yeah, that's a big issue in public finance, as you sure you know.
right. Any questions for Brian? Thank you, sir.
You need a motion on 13.
Motion, I mean, I read it and I didn't have any big exceptions to anything. I'll agree.
Second the motion or the motion to approve policy number FIN-10. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Mr. Stinson, General Manager's report.
Yes, sir. A few items from the meeting summary. I reported that we continue to have discussions with the University of Houston regarding satellite imagery. Matter of fact, you may have seen some recent newspaper articles or television stories that are related to that data that they published. We had a meeting. You may know Dr. Neil Gaynor, who's a professional geoscience, retired in the oil industry, had a meeting with him and the group, Dr. the professor. And he had some questions, so he's reviewing the data. At some point, we may bring it to the trustees to see if you want to try to form a community partnership to fund looking at some detailed data in the woodlands in Montgomery County. I think the information and the data is there. Just do a deeper dive into the information and see if it's something that we could find useful and worthwhile. We're still looking at that, and we'll come back at a later date for your feedback. We also talked about setting a date in November, December with our financial advisors for us and the River Authority to start looking at what a separate line item on the retail customer water bill might look like for critical infrastructure renewal. As you have been seeing, the River Authority is looking at some very, very large investment in critical infrastructure over the next 10 years, millions, if not tens of millions of dollars. And it's likely that the choice to fund that would be through municipal bonds. And what impact would that be on the water bill? We think we have some ideas, but we want to firm that up and start seeing if that's the direction the trustees and the MUDs want to go, and develop a public information effort campaign, if you will, to make sure the public's well aware of how that will play out before we actually sell the bonds. We had discussions about HARC, a public information portal that they were putting together back when the One Water Task Force was active. And then when that task force dissolved, that effort got put on a big pause, and there's some desire from our public education committee to get that restarted, if you will. And so we'll be looking for funding partners for that as well. PACUS negotiations have stalled somewhat. We had a fairly productive meeting with them back a couple of months ago with a new person assigned to us, our chief operating officer, to work to kind of work out the damage, system damage invoices, and it stalled. So I had a discussion with their chief financial officer last Wednesday evening. And he's seen what he can do to work this through their CEO, Hal Brumfield. So more to come on that. And then Public Education Committee had a meeting prior to the trustee meeting looking at the monthly water bill comparison for Woodlands residents and some of the surrounding communities. And it was not only the monthly water bill for an average water bill, but also included ad valorem tax rates. And they recommended that we redo that and do a weighted average of the MUD tax rate instead of the average. And it added actually 1.9 pennies to the tax rate. So that you may be seeing that or have already seen that published on social media. And that concludes my report.
Question on page 66 on projects.
Yes, sir.
Is the State Highway 242 widening happening? I thought that would have been killed.
So it wasn't an impact, community impact.
Mike, have you heard anything from
I
that?
have not. We've got 30% plans for review. That's all we've got.
But
Now, the one
I
that's
did
community
see press
impact, I
release
haven't
from the
heard the one that
township.
said it was a no-go.
Yeah,
Didn't they redesign it? I think they were talking about doing a redesign. Yeah, they told me it's something he was at, he heard there was a redesign for it, so.
Well, there's a lot of press that came out when the Chairman Bunch had a statement about Takula Gibbs being point on having that pulled back. Now, maybe they're still doing a more limited scope that doesn't involve an expansion of the lanes.
Another one for 1488. It's not 242.
Yeah, not 242, not expansion of the lanes, not sound barrier.
That's what I read.
Anything else for Jim? So Jim also covered a lot of what the trustees report would be for item 15. One other item that we talked about was the AMI automatic meters that have been replaced. I think we're still 99%-ish on getting them in.
Correct. We had a meeting with the Amoresco last Tuesday or Wednesday, and their goal is to be out by the end of the month.
And when can we expect initial updates on performance? You know, how are these new meters performing relative to expectations? How's it affecting revenues and accuracy and any other kind of qualitative things? Is that a year after everything's in?
Couple of years, I think.
Probably, yeah.
It's in the contract. They come back and do a audit, but I think it's 2 years after the final contract. If I remember,
Yeah. That would be a good thing to update at the trustee meeting or whoever, because I know there's an interest in, hey, this was a big project and it wasn't cheap, you know, how are we doing?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's in the contract. Yeah, it is, you're right. I think it is 2 years.
that sounds right.
Verify the accuracy of the meters, and then we'll get through another summer, see how people's behavior has changed.
I'm telling you, we know they're accurate as heck. I'm getting calls from homeowners and plumbers. It's driving the plumbing community crazy because people are getting the notices from us that you've got a leak and trying to find it. And the plumbers are really overwhelmed with the customer calls to find those leaks, and they're finding them.
Good.
Probably a good thing. Right.
So I have a question, and you kind of already covered it, but it's in the GM report. Talk about PowerPoint presentation from Dr. Khan.
Yes,
Is that PowerPoint presentation available? Is it useful?
it's in a draft form, but I'd be happy to send it to you. They've released it for us to review, and I'd be happy to share it with you.
I mean, I don't know what you guys are hearing, but I mean, there's a lot of chatter in the community with the election coming up and the whole subsidence issue. So the more information we can be prepared to engage in the community, the better off we are. Because I mean, you know, you're still hearing people say, subsidence, it's a Harris County issue. It's not an issue for Montgomery County. It's like, guys, you know, so whatever we're doing.
The news article that in the paper and is probably going to be more useful than the PowerPoint, but I'm happy to share it with you.
Yeah, okay.
And the HARC report's pretty good to go through as well.
Okay.
Hey, whatever is most useful to convince Conroe and anybody else not paying their bills to start paying their bills, that's what I want highlighted and promoted. By not paying their bills, I mean not paying their full contractual billed amounts. Any need for closed session?
No, sir.
Okay, that takes care of 16 and 17. I think as far as future agenda, we're gonna move Paul Nelson's presentation to the next agenda. Brad, did you have any other recommendations you wanted to see on future agendas?
No, you handed these out, but we didn't talk about them, did we?
Oh, we didn't. No, this is just informational, so it's just showing the aquifer level. What you have is the first two, well, the first page is the Jasper, one from 2010 to 2022. The back page is going to be from 1990 to 2022. And it's just the aquifer levels for the statics that we pull in the spring and fall, or I guess winter. So it's usually February and September, October.
Can you convey a message from all these charts, or?
Yeah, if you look, if you go to the 1990 one on any of them, you'll see right around 2015 where the blue line splits, blue line goes down, yellow line kind of goes across. That's when the surface water came in. And if you look at the corresponding aquifer, you can see the aquifer started to do a rebound. And so that's, I know, Don, you probably started this early on. We continued it because it is showing where the aquifer sits in relation to where surface water and groundwater blend ratios are.
I think the other big interesting takeaway here is we're bouncing around less than 6 million. What is that gallon? 6 million thousand gallons or something.
Yeah, on the right.
And, 10 years ago, we were at 8 million during the drought, 2011.
And the drought that we had, and we're still in whatnot, you can see there's a sharper drop on both the aquifers, more on the Jasper, because that's the primary aquifer that we use. 85% of the water demand comes from Jasper.
And I'm not looking at it as a total, is that, because we would have used about 8 billion probably during the drought.
Yeah, in
And we're at 6
2012,
yeah,
8 billion.
8 billion, so we're at about 6 billion.
Now we're, yeah. So even in a drought year, we're 25% below 2011. How's
Twenty
the,
eleven, don't forget, was all groundwater, no surface water.
But the total gallons was 8 billion.
Yeah, it shows,
The axis on the right is water demand in billions.
million times thousand, so billion. And then the left is gonna be the depth of the aquifer in feet.
It's labeled, but the right one's not labeled.
We got cut off.
all right, any other items for future agendas? Meeting's adjourned.